Welcome to today's podcast, Healing Through Love, with Dr. Matt Singer, a holistic medicine specialist with an expertise in energy work, homeopathy, and works with people all around the world to help them remove emotions trapped in the body. And co-host Holly Celiano, a mother, intuitive healer, and well known to international audiences as a resource for truth seekers on a variety of global concerns that are currently impacting humanity. Today's focus: how to be your authentic self.
Hello, everybody. I'm Holly Celiano, and today I'm here with Dr. Matt Singer, and today we are talking on how to be your authentic self. So, hello, Matt.
Holly, it's such a pleasure and honor to do this with you again. So I wanted to start this conversation out with about learning how to be yourself. And the reason why I wanted to is because it seems like there's such a struggle for people to really identify with who they are. They will give themselves away. For example, let's say they're working in a business and their boss is very demanding of themselves. I see this happen all the time with men and with women. With women, a lot of times they're degraded. They are asked to do things that other people wouldn't be asked to do. They're embarrassed and they're afraid to say no. They're afraid to say no because they're afraid they're either going to get fired, or they're afraid that if they say no, it won't lead to this promotion, or they won't be appreciated, or they won't be loved. So they're afraid to say no. So I wanted to talk about this. So hopefully our viewers who are listening, it can help to inspire them and to see that they don't have to be somebody that they're not. They could be their authentic self, because who that is perfect. So what do you think? You want to get started with that?
Sure. The problem I see is most people don't know how to be their authentic self, because from the time we've been born, we've been told what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And we've become very structured in our lives on being really good listeners to what everybody else wants us to do. And people then don't know who they are or how to be their authentic self. And what I had found on my journey of healing myself is I finally got to a place where I did not care about what anybody thought about me. I didn't care if people liked me. I didn't care if they judged me. I didn't care if they wanted to be my friend or not. And I found when I got to that place of total acceptance of myself, that's when I found my true authentic self, because then I'm not doing anything to please anybody else. I am showing up for myself, what works for me. I have my voice to say no. I'm not afraid if I offend somebody because I'm not going along with their agenda. It's my authentic self of, this is truly what I want, and whether you like it or you don't like it, I have to follow what works for me. And too many times people compromise themselves in every situation to fit into a box to please everybody else. And inside they're screaming, no, I don't want to be doing this. But they do it because they're so afraid of not being liked. And bottom line, that is the key thing, is we from kids want to be liked. So we have that carrying forward into adulthood, where we're doing things just so people will like us. And when you stop that insanity and just say, I don't care if people like me or not. I don't want another friend. I have to be true to myself. And that's when you become authentic.
Absolutely. And you said so many great points there, and it brings me to the origin of it. So if we are raised by parents who want us to fit in because they're afraid of the same thing, where they're afraid of themselves and they feel like they don't fit in, they're going to raise us with beliefs that we have to participate in certain sports, or we have to join certain groups, or we have to be accepted by certain types of people. And we see it all over. And that's where the origin really comes from. It comes from how we're raised, and it comes from this false belief that we have to fit into a certain structure, and that's not true at all. And I find it so interesting now as a parent when I am with my children that they don't have to do what I did, or they don't have to be someone that I want them to be. They have to be themselves. And it's so hard actually in this day and age to actually find parents who are willing to say that. Or I hear them say, no, 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 my child has to go to this school, or they have to get these grades, or they have to go to this graduate school. They have to be here by the time they're 35, and here by the time they're 50, and here by the time they're 20. They've got to make at least $1 million by the time they're 25. And the child is not able to live their own life. You find that a lot?
Absolutely. And then what happens is you set that pattern up from childhood into adulthood. So all we're doing is appeasing everybody else because that's what we've been taught. That's what we know. And we're internally screaming inwardly, this is not what I want to do.
Yes.
And go ahead.
Yes. And here's what's interesting. So think about this situation. So I'll have situations where parents bring their children in, and the parent says, my child has anxiety. And the parent is overbearing, and they're not letting the child speak, yet they're wondering why the child has anxiety. So what's hard for me, but it has to be done, is I have to look that parent in the eye and say, the problem's not with your child, the problem's with you. And a lot of times they don't want to hear that, and they get mad at me. But right. They're the ones who created that situation in the child. And it will be the same thing in all different scenarios. If it's in an intimate relationship, a husband and a wife, let's say a husband is so overbearing, so controlling of his wife, afraid to have her go out. I mean, how many women do you know whose husbands are such a narcissist? They're afraid to let them go out by themselves. They're afraid to let them have friends. They want to know what they're doing at all times. They don't trust them. They don't trust anybody else. And they say, no, I trust you. I don't trust anybody else. It's them. It's
right.
Right?
Yes.
So starting out here, what is a great thing to say to the woman who feels so beat down by her husband, or the child who feels so disenchanted by their parent? What is something we could say to enlighten them?
So I can only relate back to myself because I was beaten down in my marriage and had no say, didn't have a voice. So what I would tell everybody is, if you do not stand up for yourself, what internally you're getting, and you allow this to continue, you'll get sick because you're internalizing all of this and it is harboring and brewing. And that's what happened in my case. Don't allow yourself to get to that point where you get sick, where you're forced to make that break and make that decision to get out of something that internally you're being told, this is not healthy. I don't like this.
Yes.
For children, it's difficult for children because, in my day and age, in your day and age, we were taught respect your elders. Mm-hmm. Don't speak unless spoken to. And children today, a lot of them speak up and talk. And it's important, if you have a child that is going through, anxiety, look at yourself. Where is that coming from? Are you adding to that anxiety in the child? Are your actions and what you're saying and doing adding that to the child? Because mm-hmm. you're the adult that's responsible for their environment.
Yes. So let me ask you this. In your experience, what do you say to the woman who's married to the narcissist who says, I want to leave my husband, but I'm afraid because financially he makes the money. And then they have a belief system that they're stuck.
Yes.
And I try to tell them, well, that's not true. That's just your belief system. You have all the ability in the world to make as much money as you desire. What would you say to them in that case, in your experience?
And I was that woman. I felt stuck. I was terrified to leave because I wasn't a breadwinner. So for me, I got to the point where I was so sick. It was either, you stay and you die, or you leave and you just go with faith and know that you're going to be taken care of, because it was life or death. I chose life. I walked away.
So when you left, how quickly did you start feeling better?
When I made that decision, I started feeling better pretty much right away. I mean, it was a long journey to get to where I am now, but it was, once I finally spoke up, I could feel my soul like take a relief, like, oh my God, you're standing up for yourself finally. And that started empowering me.
Yes. Okay. So let me ask you this question. So let's say it's a friendship, and I'm sure we've all seen this in friendships, either with our children or ourselves or others. My daughter comes home, and she's telling me stories about her friends, and my friend wants me to do this, and my friend wants me to do that, and my friend wanted me to give her my favorite pair of sunglasses. So I'm listening to these stories, and I say, why are you doing this? Well, they're my friends. I said, well, are they really your friends? Well, if you didn't give them the sunglasses, what would your fear be? Well, that they wouldn't talk to me anymore.
And that's what it is. They're afraid
Right.
that they won't be their friends.
Yes. So 2 questions. One is, what motivates the friend to try and bully the other friend? What is the underlying missing emotion that they don't have that makes them bully others so they could feel important about themselves? Where do you think that starts from?
That's from their household. They're mimicking in their household the dynamics between their parents. And they must have one overpowering parent to the other, and they pick up on that. Either you become the overpowering person, or you become the one that's quiet and docile and allows it to happen to you.
So if the friend who's being the bully is actually stood up to, would they then assume the role of the more timid parent? Would they go from being the bully to the timid personality?
I don't think so. I think that in today's day and age, I don't think you're going to switch roles like that. I think it's just teaching kids to be empowered. I mean, really, that's what needs to be done, because they're going to be faced with so many things in life that are going to disempower them. If they could be empowered as a child, they're going to be so much better off. So I don't think you go from the docile one to the bully one, other than teaching them to be empowered, to have a voice.
Do you think the bully stays as the bully and just says, I'm done with you? And then that's the situation where you say, oh, my daughter goes through friends so quickly. She's friends with one, and that's really the leaky bucket problem, is it's that where they're not willing to give in. So instead they just drop them as a friend.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I had written some, I call them Hollyisms, that I think is really helpful on becoming your authentic self, on how to be. So don't judge anyone for their choices or where they are in life. It's their journey, and they need to find their own way through their life lessons. That's number one. Number two, be kind to everyone. You don't know what they are going through and their inner struggles. And everybody has inner struggles, and you don't know what's going on. Number three, show love and compassion to everyone. Number four, love yourself first and foremost. Have compassion for yourself and be kind to yourself. And as you and I have talked about so many times, it all starts with loving yourself. Yes. If you are not your true, authentic self, it's because you don't love yourself. Because you are You want love from everybody else outside yourself because you think that's what is going to give you that. But it's
Correct.
really when you love yourself enough, you will not allow anybody to intimidate you or bully you or say anything unkind.
So true.
Number 5, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Number 6, it's better to be silent and listen more and talk less. So sometimes people just talk and talk and talk, and they're not listening when people do that. This is my big one. Get over yourself. Don't think you're all that. So many times people feel they're so inflated with who they are. And when you get over yourself and just realize, I am no big deal. I am nobody special. I am just, here to have an experience in this life. Your ego gets deflated and you just learn life lessons. Become an observer of life, of people and situations. Have fun and be a child at heart. Everything is a lie. Unlearn everything you thought you knew, because everything that we thought we knew, we need to unlearn it. And letting go of the ego is one of the life's greatest struggles, but there is freedom in it when you do. And we're always battling the ego. And the last one, flow like water and be in the flow.
Yes. Yes. I love it. That's amazing. So there's a couple of which I just want to ask you some questions. It's such good stuff. First one is letting go of the ego, because that is so huge. And the ego is trying to ignore the soul. The soul knows the answer. The soul knows the path. The soul knows that everything in our life is divinely perfect. It has no fear. It doesn't stress over anything. It knows itself as perfect. The ego doesn't. And it's very interesting how the ego will try and take over everyday activities. It will try and take over solving problems when the ego doesn't have the ability to do that. It can only see 2 feet in front of it, whereas the higher self can see miles and miles down. It can see over the hills and valleys. It knows exactly the right path. So letting go of the ego is the biggest struggle, not just, I know for myself as well. I'm constantly, through meditation and through self-reflection, I'm doing a better job of allowing the ego to understand that it is loved and it has a very big role, but it is not in control.
Right.
And
And
when it
that
knows,
is everybody's biggest struggle, is the ego. Because the ego wants to feel important. The ego wants to be in control. The ego wants to, puff itself up. And, when you get over yourself, it's like your ego is not controlling you anymore.
Yes. And it's interesting. I found the ego is the part of us that thinks it needs the approvals from others in order to feel validated and loved.
Exactly.
And another one of your, from the list that you just read off, was the most impactful one. It wasn't said exactly the same way, but when we realize we're loved, we realize we're everything. And one of the most powerful things I learned, especially from reading Conversations with God from Neil Donald Walsh, was when I realized I was the love, I realized I was everything and needed nothing.
Correct. And that is the key thing, because anybody that does not show up as their authentic self, they don't know how to love themselves. They are looking for everybody else outside themselves to give them love. But it's all an inside job. It's when you go within and realize, I am the love I have been looking for. Nothing outside me will give me what I want.
Correct. And so I see this a lot with people who work in corporate. They will tell me in the office, I've been working on this project for 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks. I've had a team behind me. We've been working on this. We finished it and we got no acknowledgement. I said, well, The ego is the part that needs acknowledgement.
Right.
Your higher self doesn't. Your higher self already knows you're perfect, but they still hold a grudge. Yeah, but I should have gotten some acknowledgement from it.
Right.
Well, why do you think you attracted this situation?
Right.
Is because if you can learn this lesson that you don't need the acknowledgement, you're already acknowledged.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a key thing also, because everybody is always looking for acknowledgement for everything they do, because
Mm-hmm.
it makes them feel important,
Correct.
feel loved. And, when you know you are your own love and you're over yourself, then you don't need anything from anybody. And that's
Correct.
where you don't even need people to like you, because
Absolutely.
you're doing all of that and compromising yourself for people to like you, to have a relationship. I'd rather be alone and have no relationship with anybody than to go and be in, a relationship that's not serving myself.
Absolutely. And one of the most powerful quotes I ever heard was, I might be by myself, but I'm not alone.
Correct. And for me, when I went through my journey on healing myself, I had to get to the point of being alone and being okay being alone, because there is loneliness in that initially. And you have to go through that period of loneliness and then get to the point where being alone is fine. And I'm okay being alone.
That's
And it's
it's
funny, my mother asks me all the time, "Are you all right being alone?" Yeah, I love being alone. I don't need anybody.
it's so true.
Right.
And then when we become okay with it, we all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, I'm looking at my schedule and I am so busy, and you're never
Yes.
alone. When you're
Correct.
okay with it, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm actually don't have a chance to even be alone anymore. I'm so
Right.
busy.
Right. Exactly.
But when we run away from it because our parents tell us, why are you sitting home alone today? What are you, a loser? What, do you have no friends? Once we create that false belief, the ego will say, it's not good for me to be alone. I don't ever want to be
Correct.
alone. And I'll do
Correct.
everything it takes for me to be alone, not be alone, even if it means being in a harmful situation or a dangerous relationship or a narcissistic relationship. We're
Right.
running away from what we were taught as our parents, which is not true.
Correct.
It's so empowering when you can free yourself from that.
Yes, absolutely. And, again, it's unlearning everything we've been taught and learning it's okay being alone. Like, just be comfortable being with yourself, because when you are your own love, then you love yourself in all ways, whether you're alone, whether you're with people, whether, you're working, whatever it is, you're okay in your space alone.
Yes. Okay, here's the next topic I want to introduce. So in the spiritual work that I do, one of the most powerful things that I've come to understand and come in contact with and gotten to know on the intimate relationship with myself is my identity. And we all have multiple identities at multiple times. It's almost like we're living parallel realities, like Bashar says, parallel realities, millions and millions of parallel realities at every moment. So if I have a fear, let's just say we're talking about being alone, of being alone, that means I have an identity with it, or there is an identity within myself that says, if I'm alone, I'm no good. That means there's a version of me, there is identity of me that says, if I'm alone, then I'm unworthy. So when I'm doing my meditations, I have to bring that identity of myself out. It's almost like I have to strip it off me, that ego part of me that has identified a belief system that being alone is not good, that I'm unworthy if I'm alone. I have to bring him. It's going to be a version of me who looks just like me, but he has this belief that he was taught, let's say at 5 years old, that being alone is not good. You should never want to be alone. You should always be with people. That 5-year-old identity of me is fighting that 45-year-old version of me in the present, saying, you are not worthy, you are not good because you are alone. So I have to get in such contact with that version of me, and I have to speak with him, telling him, I will always love you, but you do not have to be afraid anymore. We may be alone, but we're not by ourselves. We may be alone, but we're learning more about ourselves now than we ever were. We may be alone, but I've never had more love for myself now than ever before. And I have to retrain that identity that being alone is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So it became a very powerful technique of finding that version of me, speaking to him. And what's interesting is when I connect with that version of me, that older version, he is actually embarrassed and he's got his back turned to me. And I tell him to turn around. You have nothing to be ashamed of. And I say, why are you so afraid of being alone? And you'll hear that part of you talk to you, because I'm worthless. Oh, I say, okay, is that true? And in my heart, I'll hear him say, no. I'll say, well, where'd you learn that from? My mother. Oh, perfect. Well, what's the opposite of that? Then I'll make him tell the opposite to me. I have always been connected. All right. Yes. I have always been loved. Yes, that feels good. So I'll go through it in that process. So that's another way that our listeners can at least grab onto another technique to help them understand how to speak to yourself, to know that your higher self is always with you and always listening.
Right. And that, most people don't even know how to talk to their higher self and how to basically retrain the higher self
Mm-hmm.
to understand that you have a past self, you have a present self, and there's a future self, and all coexist at the same time. And you can talk to your future self, and whatever your future self is, you can bring that into the present. Whatever happened in the past, you can bring that into the present.
Correct.
You can change the dialogue, the storylines, and you don't have to keep having the same patterns and reliving the same things, because
Yes.
we have the power to talk to those future or past selves. You can rewrite stories that happened in the past that were painful, and they will help you in the present because you're not carrying that same patterning.
Yes. So let's talk about that, because that's another powerful technique, rewriting a story. So do you have a technique that you like to do for rewriting?
So what I do is I would say, something that I've told myself that happened in the past that has bugged me, or basically I got stuck on that. I go back to that small child and rewrite the story. It's almost like I put it on a movie screen, and I'm watching the one scene unfold in front of me and see it, and then put it on pause. And then I go and I recreate a different version on how I want that outcome to be. And basically am healing the old storyline. And then I merge once I've done that, I merge into my small person that happened and grow up with the new storyline to the present self.
I love it. Have I ever talked to you about the White Mountain meditation? Does that ever sound? Okay. So this was taught to me by a shaman. It's amazing, amazing healer. So the way the White Mountain meditation goes is, let's say I'm struggling with something internally. Let's say I'm having a really hard time. I'll go into a meditation. I will visualize a white quartz mountain in front of me. And I'm supposed to visualize my guides on either side of me. And I'm walking up with them to this quartz mountain. And it's a couple 100 feet high, and it's very jagged and very rough. But there's one smooth trail that leads from the bottom, and it spirals all the way up the mountain. and it takes you right up to the top. And as you're walking up the mountain, you're supposed to visualize yourself really walking up the mountain and really being so present with yourself, visualizing your feet taking every step and feeling how smooth the trail is. And as you're visualizing the comfort of your guides on either side of you, and you're walking up this mountain, spiraling up, and then you get to the top of the mountain, and it's very smooth at the top of the mountain, and it's flat. Then you're going to notice two stone benches, and then you're going to walk to the bench, and you're going to sit down in one of them and look down, and there's a reflecting pond, and you're going to call the version of you into the pond. So if I want to connect with a version of me from 23 years old that's still holding on to a trauma, I will call that part of me into the pond. If there's an argument going on with my wife or someone else and I want to resolve it, I'll call their name into the pond. And then you're going to visualize a bunch of bushes right next to the two stone benches. And then as I call my name, my 23-year-old version of me into the pond, my 23-year-old version will come out, or that's the version of my soul that will come out, and it will sit in the bench across from me, and I will speak to that version of me, or I'll speak to the person that I want to resolve an issue with. And I'm speaking with them on the soul level. So everything that is going on, I'll speak with them. And then when it's finished, I will hug that person, whether it's myself or someone else. They'll go back into the bush. I will walk back down the mountain with my guides, and then I will come out of my meditation. And I'll tell you, I've been doing this. I learned this back in 2012, and I've been doing it ever since, and it's never not worked. It is amazing how it works, whether for yourself or clearing up an issue with somebody else, or if you have a problem, you can call anyone in to the mountain you want. You want to call your guides in. You want a solution to a problem. You want inspiration. It works for all of that. It's incredibly powerful.
So when you sit there on the bench, let's just say somebody has an issue with their job, and you can call in the people at their work to sit there, you will get the information on what needs to be done at their job to resolve the conflict?
Absolutely, because let's say you call in an associate that you work with. Their soul is going to come forward and sit with you on the bench. So not the physical version of them, the spiritual version of them will come in. You'll speak with their higher self, because their higher self is not going to be the ego of them in the current life that you're living. It's going to be their higher version. So you're going to get such deep, inspiring understanding of why they're treating you that way. So they may come forward and say, this was a promise I made to you back in the boardroom before we even came to Earth, that I needed to treat you this way so you could master the lesson that you wanted to learn. And then you get such clarity as to why they're doing it. So let's say, give me an example of the way someone could be treated at work that wouldn't be fair. They could be treated how?
Let's just say their workload is super heavy, and they're taken advantage of and put on more workload than everybody else.
Absolutely. So when you're speaking to, let's say your boss, and you're saying to them, why am I being so unfairly treated? I'm giving everybody's work. Why is this being put on me? Their soul, as they speak to you, will say, well, I want you to understand what you're really learning. Do you even like this job? And then half the time people say, no, I don't. So, well, you needed me to keep loading you up with work that you don't even like doing so you could finally get the inspiration to say, I don't want to do this anymore. Or you may love the job, and the inspiration may be that you're not pushing yourself enough, and it's proving to you that you can do anything, that you can live at a superhuman level and handle it. It could be preparing you for so many things that you now can handle. So it's always on a soul lesson. It's always on a higher lesson as to why it's happening.
And for the listeners, that's the big thing, the big takeaway is if you look at everything that happens to you in life with your spouse, with your children, with work, with relationships, with friends, and there's a conflict or something going on, look at it, it's happening not to you, but for you, for your lesson, for what you need to learn to grow as a person, to become a better person.
Correct. That's so true.
And that's the big thing. That's every time something happens in my life now, I'm so in the mindset of, okay, what is the lesson? Why is this happening? What am I to learn? And when you approach everything that way, then you never fall victim to anything anymore. And you are coming from a higher perspective where you can see the 10,000 foot view as to what's going on versus being the wounded person involved in whatever's happening. Because nobody hurts you. You only hurt yourself by what you tell yourself.
Yes, that was the greatest eye opener for me. Is nobody could ever hurt me. It's only me that can hurt me.
Right. Yep. Whether I choose to get hurt by what somebody says or does, that's on me. They're not doing it.
And that's a great way to summarize our podcast for today, is whether it's the woman in the narcissistic relationship, the man or woman in the horrible job situation, the teenager or adult in the friendship relationship that is just abusive, whatever it may be, when they can bring it back to self-love, everything shifts. Everything changes. Once they remember they are the love, there's never a problem again. Everything returns back to the state of balance. Everything feels as it should. Everything makes sense. Everything fits. There's no struggle. There's no fear. It all fits.
Yes. And to tie in with that, when you also, that's how you become authentic with being your true self, is when you're the love and when you don't care what anybody thinks about you. And that's when you find your voice and you stand up for yourself, and that these things that happen to you are happening for you to make you grow and find that voice within to say enough, no more.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. I love it. So besides that, any last things we want to say before we end?
Well, for anyone struggling right now that is not their true authentic self, look at your life situation and realize you are the power to say no to this, and you are being pushed by the universe to find that voice within, to stand up for yourself, to be your true authentic self. And it is so empowering when you are. There's a confidence that you exude when you are your true authentic self, because people also know you have boundaries and you will not allow anybody to overstep those boundaries that you have.
Yes. Beautiful. I love it.
How about you? What's your wrap up?
My wrap up would be just like you were saying. I want you to do your rewrite. For anybody listening, all the listeners, whatever you don't like in your current situation, rewrite it. Visualize it the way it's going, and visualize yourself rewriting it. Rewrite your story, and reality will follow that rewrite.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, this was great. May you all find your true, authentic self and your voice and stand up for yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Holly. It's such a pleasure doing this with you.
Thank you, Matt. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Great. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining Healing Through Love. And please stay tuned for future shows and join us as we spread the power of love.